I can like never tell if this is truly working because we have like 17 different softwares on the back end that are like jerry rigged together. Uh, we are good to go, Dana.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. It is The Real Hawk Talk. I am Dayna OG. I am joined tonight by three. I think they looked a little sad earlier. I said that. I thought they all were just kind of like sad gentlemen. But joining me, of course, we have Evan, we have Jeff, we have Nathan. Boys, in our Patreon chat, they asked us to not depress them tonight. So that'll be harder for some of us than others. But Nathan.
Well, the good news is there's been no real, Seahawks information campaigns out there recently. It's been really dead on the Seahawks front. There's no discussion whatsoever about, anything important. There's just not much going on.
No, there's nothing going on. It's really boring. No matter what Nathan's picture seems to tell us, it is kind of a quiet night. But listen, here's the deal. Tonight, there was a complete meltdown over 4 letters that Tessina Anderson tweeted. It just said, well, doesn't say anything else. But again, the sky was falling. The funny thing is, the sky was falling for Seahawks fans. The sky was falling for Texans fans. Skies were falling for all kinds of different teams. But here's the deal. In my opinion, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion, nothing has really changed in the last 2 weeks. Let's be honest. A lot of chatter, a lot of talk.
One thing changed.
What changed?
One thing
Your
changed.
background changed.
All right, yeah. Dunlap got cut.
Oh,
That's
yes.
the big one. That
is true. That was heartbreaking to me,
yeah,
too. I think that all of us, I know Jeff and I were really on the keep Dunlap train there. Jeff, let me ask you, because that's a really good point, Nathan. What are his chances of coming back, do you think?
I think there's a decent chance. Mm-hmm. The thing that I just keep coming back to is just the pass rush market is saturated with options. So I think, and we had this discussion in our chat yesterday, I think Dunlap and his camp probably saw JJ Watt's deal, and JJ Watt got overpaid for what he is. He got $15 million a year. He's not that player anymore. And I think his camp thinks, okay, I was better than JJ Watt last year. So I think he's going to hit the market. But when we did our defensive end show last week, you got to remember, it's sort of like what happened with Greg Olsen last year, where he hit the market a lot earlier than everyone else, and he got paid because of a bidding war. He got overpaid, and Seattle, unfortunately, was on the wrong end of that. And that's what happened with Watt last year. Sort of like the real estate market, where timing is everything, and he's competing against no one. Free agency starts on Monday, technically. That's when the tampering period. Dunlap is probably not going to get signed in the next 2 days, and he's going up against the deepest position. Mm-hmm. And he's a 32-year-old. I don't think he's going to get what he thought he did, and that's where he might come back to Seattle, and there might be a deal.
You know what I'm really disappointed about, though, Jeff?
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that the cut happened after our show about the whole defensive line. Because I feel like there was this sort of like assumption throughout that entire discussion that we had for an hour and a half or whatever it was that Carlos Dunlap was going to be back next year. Mm-hmm. Like, he was one of the key, I don't think it's unfair to say he was like one of the leading reasons behind their defensive turnaround, midway through the year.
For sure.
He was a catalyst for that defensive turnaround. And it really sucks to lose him. He was their best pass rusher. If he leaves and he signs with another team, that position group is suddenly looking like a big problem. So it's unfortunate news. I'm just going to interject my thoughts real quick here, Dana, but I think it was an unnecessary risk to take, in my opinion. I don't disagree that they needed to lower his cap number, but they could have done it via extension. It may have been a little bit more expensive than they wanted to via extension. But there's a risk element at play here because if he does leave for another team, you just lost your best pass rusher who fits their system so well. Mm-hmm. He proved it all of last year. So it's a bummer. It is what it is, but they also needed the cap space. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at it from purely the fan side of this too, Dunlap really seemed happy in Seattle and was, really enjoying the system and having a good time. And I think that he was 100% the reason for that turnaround. It was just different when he was on the field. Nathan, when we're talking about Dunlap here, and I know that you guys talked about that position group last week, but when we talk about him here, what numbers, and I know it's really hard to know, but what are the numbers we're looking at here? What do you think Seattle maybe put on the table that he said no to, but maybe we'll get him back for? Any idea?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I don't know. I mean, if they were willing to offer him an extension, I think that they then have some flexibility on what his first year cap hit looks like, right? But like Jeff was saying earlier, it's very possible that Dunlap looked at the JJ Watt deal and said, "I'm better than him, and I want more than him." And we spent the last show making fun of the Cardinals for giving Watt that contract, right? So it's hard to know what they would have done and what Dunlap's asking for. I mean, the big thing for me in that is that it sounds like they'd made an agreement with him that if they weren't going to extend him, that they would release him and let him test the market. That gives me some hope that because they, followed through on that, that Dunlap may be more willing to come back if the bigger offers aren't out there for him. But it's a huge risk and leaves a huge hole until they figure that out or get somebody else.
One other element at play here is, and I think Brian brought this up on that episode that we did, but his presence really unlocked Jaron Reed. Much like Frank. What was that?
Don't tell Jaron Reed that.
Yeah, Jaron Reed is a little, sensitive in his feelings about criticism, but we saw the same with Frank Clark when Frank Clark was here. And when Frank Clark was out for periods of time, Jaron Reed would struggle. So yeah, it's a tough loss. I just can't get over how they couldn't figure it out extension wise, but I don't want to spend too much time on this, but
right. Yeah. And like Nathan said, maybe that's not what they decided to do. Maybe they promised him that they wouldn't extend, push that too much and let him try. And, there's all kinds of things that go on behind the scenes that we don't know about, and, conversations and deals and all that other stuff. So I really hope he comes back. I really feel like he was such a good fit. So yeah. So of course I want to mention that obviously Brian is not here with us tonight. He was not able to join us. So I hope you guys are okay with me hosting and trying to keep this group as positive as I can. There was a request from Sam in our Patreon chat that said, please, Dayna, keep them positive. I've been trying for a year now. Hasn't really worked, but we'll see what we can do. So let's go ahead and talk about this position group. It's my favorite position group on the field is the secondary, the safeties, and the cornerback. I have put, I'm not a big fan of offense. I really don't like quarterbacks all that much. I love the secondary, and I always have, because I think they are probably the biggest difference makers on the field, which I'm sure someone will argue with me about. But looking at last year's group, we had, the whole thing, we had some injuries and then they came back and some switching and some moving around. Give me your guys' thoughts on the group they had last year, and how you think they performed and turned everything around. And we talked about Dunlap already, being on the line, but let's talk about in that secondary, because they did seem to do some good things in the second half of this season. Nathan, why don't we start with you?
Well, I was actually going to say, Jeff, do you want to kick us off with sure. who do they still have and who is a free agent? And then we can talk about that group, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to start doing the whole secondary, or do you want me to start with corner?
Oh,
let's start with corner. Mm-hmm. So who they have currently on the roster, and who's a pending free agent.
We prepare really well for this show every week.
I do have some things ready, though.
Jeff always has things ready. The rest of us are like, ready. Let's try.
Okay, so cornerback, they have under contract Ugo Amadi, DJ Reed, Trey Flowers, who got a little bit of a bump in pay, and Marquise Blair, who a lot of people seem to have forgotten about. I don't know if he's a corner anymore or safety, but he is still under contract. UFAs coming up this year, they have Shaq Griffin, who was their starting left corner last year, and Quinton Dunbar, who was their big acquisition, and then Nico Thorpe, who mostly plays special teams. Then I think Lyndon Stevens is one of those ERFAs. I'm not really sure what that is, but yeah, he's still.
What did you say DJ Reed was?
DJ Reed's in the last year of his deal of his rookie contract.
Okay. I didn't, for some reason I thought he was like a UDFA, but that's
No,
totally incorrect.
He's in the fourth year of his contract.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember. DJ Reed looked much better as an outside corner, right? Than he did as a
Definitely.
which is not really intuitive, right? When you kind of think about his skill set and his size and everything, you kind of think of the nickel position, right? I think the group as a whole last year, I think that, especially with Reed coming on and playing well and replacing Dunbar, right? And the whole Dunbar thing is a bummer because he clearly wasn't healthy and got put in a bad position and looked terrible. But, he just wasn't right. So once they kind of sorted out their health issues and got their starting group with Reed and Quill, I thought they looked fine, right? I mean, the defense played really well down the stretch. I think people are kind of down on Quill right now, and I get that he's probably going to make a lot more money than Seattle can afford. But I think that he played pretty well overall in the season. I think he's still a good player. He didn't have the crazy PFF grade that he had the year before, right? And maybe he's kind of maxed out on just how good he can be. And I think we were probably hopeful that he could continue to grow and stuff. But I thought he was good. I mean, he was really solid for the most part. So, by the time the season ended, this cornerback group looked pretty decent. Ugo was a nice surprise at nickel. I don't think he lit the world on fire, but he was solid, no big mistakes or anything like that. So it was a pretty well-rounded group by the time they kind of figured out all their pieces.
Am I correct in reading your sort of tea leaves here that you might be changing your opinion on them wanting to extend Shaquille?
Oh, I don't know. They might. I wonder if they don't have a soft spot for him.
But you've been making comments though, Nathan, over the past couple of weeks. I want to dig into this a little bit because you were initially like, if my memory is correct, you were initially like, he's going to get paid way too much in free agency. I don't think he's a good player to extend that good teams, do. But you've been saying recently that you believe more and more that they're going to bring him back, right?
I think he's a good player. I think there's a good chance that, for a while there, what were we talking about? Him getting 15, 16 million or something like that?
Yeah.
And, I don't know. He had kind of an up and down season. So I don't know where I was. I'm sure you can find me saying different things at different points of time. But no, I think he's good. I think that they might have a soft spot for him. He was a mid-round guy that they found and they coached up, and I think he played pretty solid for them. I just think they might have a soft spot for him. But 19 million in cap, that's.
So what number are you comfortable retaining him at?
That's the thing, with the cap number and everything, and knowing for sure, they have $19 million, right?
Yep.
I'm not comfortable signing anyone at any amount of money.
Nobody gets any money.
Nobody gets money. There's no money. Come back next year.
We are a poor football team. No money.
The weird thing is they're 12th in the NFL in available cap room, and they have no money.
No, they are. I should give you a little bit more context, Nathan, and maybe you know this, but maybe the audience doesn't. But Jalen Ramsey sits at $20 million a year, top of the cornerback market. Top 5 corners are pretty much $16 to $20 million a year. Top 10 is, $12 million a year on that bottom side of the 10. What number truly does start to make you uncomfortable in terms of retaining him?
In a normal year, I think anything kind of 10 to 12, I'd be mostly okay with. I'd be fine with. Right. If you start getting up near 15, 16, where you start talking about top 5 and stuff, and the whole top 5 thing, right? Every year the market is set, right? Basically at every position, just because that's how it works. And so it's probably not crazy to think that in a normal year, he probably would have pushed something like 15, 16 million, even kind of having an up and down year.
Yeah.
And that would have made me a little uncomfortable, but I would, if $12 million wasn't 65% of the cap or something like that, their cap space right now, I'd be fine with that, I think.
And
Evan, you can probably explain this better. If someone signs a $14 million a year average, what's the first year number? Because that's the thing they're going to have to sort of squeeze. Levante David got a $12 million a year deal yesterday, but his cap hits $3 million this year.
Yeah. So it's typically this is a very rough ballpark. And I'm glad you brought that up. It's typically 50 to 60% of that average annual number that you hear thrown around. So if Jalen Ramsey got like, actually, I don't want to use a specific name that's already out there, but like if somebody got like 15 million a year, it's highly conceivable, if not likely, that first year cap hit is like $7.5 million, $8 million bucks, because it slowly creeps up. That's the way teams structure those contracts, is super low base salaries in the initial years. And the way it works out from the player's perspective is, signing bonus is all paid up front. So from a cash flow perspective, that player's not only getting the base salary, but they're getting, the total signing bonus of whatever that may be. So I'm not as worried about their current cap space number. I'm not as worried as other people are. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. That Dunlap move really opened up things for them. And, if they find themselves in a bind or in a pinch, in wave 1 or wave 2 of free agency, and they're like, they see somebody and they're just like, we got to have them. They could pull a restructure in seconds. Like they don't have, like, this is one other cap point that I just want to layer in here. When teams restructure contracts, they don't need player permission. Okay. So they already have what they called our conversion rights. It's a conversion right language in these NFL contracts, where basically the Seahawks could say, we're going to convert your base salary to signing bonus to save us cap space, and we're going to give you more money fully guaranteed up front. So it's a positive thing for the player, but they don't need the player's permission. So long story short, I actually think they're sitting fine cap-wise right now. Like they could totally easily afford like a Corey Linsley right now or a Joe Thuney. Maybe not both right off the bat. They'd probably have to do something, but they're okay right now moving into free agency.
So I want to go back to Nathan's point about Griffin being, them having a soft spot for him. Unfortunately, this is the year soft spots don't matter, unless they can figure out a way. Now they can look down the road and we can all look at those TV deals and we can all know that they are going to jump huge. That cap is going to jump huge. And so if they can work with him, and maybe pull on his heartstrings, be like, don't you want to stay here with your brother? Don't you want to, work this with us or whatever? But this is a tough year, and this is going to be a tough year for any free agent. We've talked about that before, that, there's going to be a lot of 1-year deals. There's going to be a lot of prove it deals, maybe next year sort of a thing. But I think with him, unfortunately, what's going to get him is so many teams are in the weeds when it comes to the cap, but the soft spot and the people wanting him, wanting him to stay in Seattle, that's just not going to necessarily be feasible this year. It's going to be kind of difficult. But I want to talk about DJ Reed for just a few minutes. So he really came in and surprised a lot of people. And then the storyline came out where San Francisco was talking about how they really thought they were going to turn around and keep him, that they had no intention of letting him go. But he really seemed to wear that release from San Francisco like a chip on his shoulder, and he just played fantastically. What was your expectations? And Jeff, I'll start with you. What were your expectations when they brought him on board? And do you see him, just getting even better next year? Is this someone that Seattle should invest in long term?
So I'll start with your first question. My expectations were absolutely nothing. He was coming off an injury. They seemed, like Nathan said earlier, his body profile as a nickel corner. They had Amadi there. They initially had Blair there. It seemed like just a shot in the dark, build up depth, total flyer. Mm-hmm. And he is very unique compared to the kind of players that they have. And he is not their typical outside corner. He does not have the frame. He does not have the long arms. He's, I think, 5'9" or 5'10". I don't know his exact size, but he just looks nothing like the same kind of profile they have with Sherman and Browner and Griffin and Dunbar and Flowers. They all kind of are built the same way. But he added something that was totally unique to this group, and he was just a playmaker with, not for a better word, ball skills. And they don't, the downside and the sort of the knock on Keel and sort of been the knock his whole career is he doesn't really have that in this game. And Trey Flowers, to his credit, he got better this year in the second half. He's not a guy who takes the ball away. He's not a guy who makes a lot of plays on the ball. He's a decent cover guy. But really, since Sherman left, they haven't really had, even like dating back, Justin Coleman was pretty good at this too. But they don't really have someone who made plays on the ball. And I remember that Washington game specifically. Reed was one of the best players on the field in that game. And he just added something. He added a level of confidence. a level of just like, I'm going to beat you and I know it. And you kind of have to have that attitude either to play receiver or corner. You have to have this overconfident, like, I don't care if I'm wrong. And that's another thing that makes like Keel a weird player, because he seems just like such a nice guy, and like he's more calm. He's not like built like the thing of all the great corners of all time, like Sherman and Woodson and the guys who just run their mouths nonstop. You sort of have to be built like that to play corner, and Reed sort of fit that personality. So it was a nice change to have someone who can kind of spice up the Flowers Griffin thing they had going on. But long term, I'm not ready to say that yet. I need to see more. He's
you know what the problem is on Shaquille, just for 1 second, is like the corner market is so bloated that
I'm looking at the list. It's crazy.
To retain Shaquille, you're probably gonna have to pay somewhere between $12 and $14 million a year, I think.
And and the thing is, two teams, I tweeted this out today. The two teams who control this free agent market are the Jets and Jacksonville. So let's go with those two. Both have a huge need at corner. He's from the North Florida area. So Jacksonville, natural tie. They have Shoddy, Brian Schneider, and Bevel on staff. So a lot of ties to him. The Jets are running Robert Saleh, Pete Carroll's defense. They need corners, outside corners. So you're going up against teams with $60 million plus of cap room. It's hard to see Seattle competing with those teams,
especially with the needs we have. Like the point I was going to follow up with was like, it's a matter of, I don't know if this makes sense as a phrase, but like allocation value of like the dollar, like that, like $12 to $14 million buys you an elite offensive lineman. It buys you a mediocre corner. You know, where do you want to spend that money relative to this team's needs?
Does it depend on who your quarterback is? Sorry. Just kidding.
I'm not sure we want to get into that, Dayna.
Sorry.
We're supposed to be positive.
Yeah, I thought we were being positive. Hold up. Wow.
It was an option.
Dayna's so negative always. Good Lord.
A Dayna Downer over here.
We're being all happy about spending.
Hi, my name is Dayna. I'm a downer.
The other thing to consider, like you're saying there, like, you know, what is the value of your buck there, right? And you know, I mean, talking about DJ Reed and how you'd think he's a nickel, but he played better outside, right? Marquise Blair, you'd think he's an outside corner, right? He played pretty well at nickel. So you have Ugo and Blair, who looked solid at nickel. Blair projects to be potentially an outside corner as well. You would think that would be a more natural position for him. Then you have DJ Reed and Trey Flowers. And I mean, I think Trey Flowers is solidly below average at best. But, you know, he's been a starter for this team for a while. So you kind of have four guys there and a little flexibility. Four guys already, right? And so, like, I don't love the idea of going in to the season with those being your top four guys. Like, maybe you try to pull a rookie or something, but like, I don't know that you need to spend a chunk of this year's cap space, even if you do get him, you know, the lower, it's going to be a multi-year deal, so it'll be lower this year. Quill just doesn't seem to provide a lot of bang for your buck there, right?
Agreed.
Now, Dunbar is an interesting name, though.
Sure.
He's a guy where, you know, really struggled this year due to injuries, is what it feels like mostly. Never got a chance to prove himself in this system. He's a guy, and I know we've been talking about this in our group chat for a while now, but his price might be so low that it probably makes sense. If you can get him at under $4 million on a 1-year prove-it deal, do you do it? I think you do.
How much? 1 year what? 4 years?
Under 4 million. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think so.
You know, it's hard. I have a hard time with that one, just because when he came over from Washington, you heard a lot of chirping from Washington fans saying, oh, you know, he's injury prone. He can't stay on the field. Oh, this, oh, that. And then turn around and he had a whole injury-ridden year. So I get nervous about that. And I don't believe that. That's not true. I do believe that certain players can be injury prone, but some players just get a streak of bad luck. So then you have to kind of weigh that out a little bit and be like, is it worth it? Or are we just throwing more money down the hole when we really don't know that he'll be able to actually have a full season?
Yeah. I mean, it just, to me, and I think we agree on this, Dana, I think it just comes down to the cost. Like, what does his market look like? Does he have any suitors? Because it could be much lower than $4 million. It could be, a veteran minimum salary benefit type of situation where you have almost zero risk. But I think he should be a target for them if the price is right.
All right, so let's do that. Let's play this game a little bit. Okay, so we know the 4 that are there for sure. So we have Blair, Reed, Ugo Imadi, and Trey Flowers.
Yep.
So Shaquille's gone. Okay, let's just think that he's off in Jacksonville, back with his family. So let's look at some of these free agents that are out there. Now, I'm going to bring one up. And I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. And I'm absolutely 100% breaking one of Jeff's cardinal rules in free agency. Okay. No questions asked. But I really want my Richard Sherman to come home. Now, here's the thing. He is one of my favorite football players of all time. So that's why it's emotional for me. But I also want to talk about this. So I am a soccer fan. You guys know this. And I also love football. And one thing that they have in soccer that they also have in American football is what's called a super sub in soccer. Now, I know Richard Sherman is not the player he used to be, but in soccer, when they have a super sub, it is usually a really good player that's aging that can't play the full 90 anymore, right? And so they bring him in, for situations, NFL situational player. Would it be worth it for Seattle to try to get Sherman to come back? If for number one, because I too miss that swagger on this team. I think Jamal has it in spades, and we'll talk about him in just a minute, but I just really miss that swagger. But also to maybe just see if he gives the spark back to this team. I have one Seahawks jersey and it's Richard Sherman's. That's how I feel. So I'm breaking your rule, Jeff, but just play the game with me and tell me what you guys think. I'm going to skip Nathan because I think I already know what Nathan's going to do.
Dana, I'm really concerned you're overlooking a major point here.
I'm really not.
Richard said he only wants to play for a Super Bowl contender.
Oh, stop it. Just stop
it's just not a natural fit, unfortunately.
No, I think that you are being a Debbie Downer, and we need to move on from that right now. You're
That's
not being
also
positive.
fair.
Is this a horrible idea? Is it just my heartstrings? But I'm telling you, I just really miss that beat. And it's not a Legion of Boom thing for me. It's not that. It's the player, the teacher, the presence.
Are you worried at all about his relationship with Pete Carroll?
No, I'm worried about his relationship with someone else on the team, not necessarily Pete Carroll, but someone else on the field. But I just think it would be really fun to have Jamal Adams and Richard Sherman on the same field at the same time. I think that would be just fun. But at the same time, I mean, we've all been told that there's not, no bridges have been burned there. And his family still lives in Seattle. I'm drawing straws. I'm just, please, oh, please, oh, please. I think it would be so fun.
Yeah, Jeff,
right.
you want to jump into this one, Jeff?
Okay, so to add what you're saying before, he actually might be at a point where it's not breaking my rules because I don't think the cost to bring in Richard Sherman is going to be like if you have to pay $10 million plus to bring in him.
Oh no, I wouldn't even want that.
That's a no, but I think he's at the point where he's more concerned about fit, and he does a podcast with Chris Collinsworth every week, and you kind of get a sense of where his head's at, and he's more concerned about being on a team that he can sort of rebuild the defense, so similar to what he did to Heath believes he did in San Francisco, where they were kind of in a no man's land team, and he went there, and then he like a lot. Trent Williams was on their show the other day, and he was just saying how much Richard meant to that team, and basically they looked up to him for everything, and he was just in there last year. So I do think it would make sense in the fact that I don't think he would cost as much as some of these other guys. I think he would do a lot for sort of rebuilding the attitude in the team, but he's not the same player he was. He barely played last year.
Yeah.
He would kind of set up a transition to the next phase. They're going to have to draft the guy if they're going to lose, and they don't really have that number one corner. So I don't hate it at all. I think it would make sense if the price is right, but if some of the things that him and Russell seem a little unsettled, and I think if he has other options, he might go somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, it's wishful thinking on my part, but, to think of him having to be like, go to the East Coast and not be on the West Coast or whatever, just for 1 to 2 more years, I don't know if that would be super appealing. It would have to be good money, I'm sure. That would probably make a huge thing. And Nathan, I really do want your thought on this. I
love
do.
the idea. I'd love to have
Me
him
too.
back. Yeah. It's just a cost thing, right?
Right.
I don't know that you can pay him more than, $4 or $5 million a year, right? And I don't know that he's going to want that right now. And I think, I love Sherm. I do wonder though, like if he comes in and let's say Blair just balls out, outside corner and Reed continues to play well. Can Richard Sherman handle being a bench player? Like, can he handle being a backup? Is he okay with not getting any snaps or maybe even being inactive?
Those are
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some other interesting veteran names too, if you want to.
Can I?
Yeah.
I am begging to throw out a name.
Okay, do it.
Begging to throw out a name. Jason Verritt from San Francisco.
He was on my list.
He is maybe one of my top targets for the Seahawks this year. The
Why
value, let me explain. The value will make sense. Injury riddled history, blew his ACL like 3 years in a row or something like that. Pre joining the 49ers, played 13 games for them last year. Talent wise, the dude is like a borderline all-pro. Okay. Like that's not disputed. Like highly talented player. Yes, has, years of injury concerns, but he played really well for San Francisco last year. And he was on a 1-year deal with them. I'm not sure he's going to get some crazy amount in free agency with, the concerns around his body. But if he's somebody that Seattle could bring in around, like a 3-year, $18 million deal or something like that, where you don't you're not expecting them to play a full 16 games, but you have a borderline all-pro talent for 10 to 13 games a year. That seems pretty good. And plus he's from the 49ers. I'd love to steal him. Bring all that intelligence our way. So that's one name I wanted to throw out.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good name because Verritt, like you said, the Saleh scheme and it comes from the Carroll scheme. It's the same system.
Yep.
So I don't think he's going to get a 3-year contract based on what you said. He's had major durability issues. And with the cap shrinking, and I'm going to go over this market in a minute, he seems like a pure 1-year contract guy. Maybe he goes back to San Francisco.
The advantage of at least giving him 2 years is you can do some cap shenanigans, right?
Exactly.
So if you give him 3 years and just backload like all of the money, then okay. But yeah, 3 years for a dude that it was a miracle. It felt like that he put together an almost full season last year. So
yeah, and to add to that, so let's go over a couple names. There's a good mix of. There's only one guy who I see who's going to cash in. William Jackson from Cincinnati. He's a young guy who didn't get much hype. He was a first-round pick, and he was on a terrible team, so no one talked.
Bengals, right?
Yeah, that guy's going to get paid. Other than that, it's like a weird mix of younger guys and like older guys, or like older guys and like first-round guys who didn't work out. So I'll go into this. Sherman's a big one, obviously. Patrick Peterson is a free agent, and he's in the same mold as Sherman, same draft class. He's had a couple down years, but he's still a very capable short-term option if you lose Griffin.
Patrick Peterson is only 31 years old, you guys.
Yeah, same as Sherman's. He's same thing. He's not the player he once was, but he's still a functional starter. Another guy, I think Nathan liked him last year. Xavier Rhodes had a really, really good year in Indianapolis. And he was a guy who got cut from Minnesota. He looked like he was sort of flaming out. And he was like all-pro level in his own defense. He signed a 1-year cheap deal. He's going to want a little more money, but he was a really good player last year. There's some other familiar names from some of the – there was the 2017 draft class, which is unfortunately infamous in Seattle. All those corners who were out of the first round are now hitting the market. So that's Kevin King, who everyone remembers from that draft class. His lasting memory in Green Bay is absolutely awful. He got destroyed in the NFC Championship game. One of the worst games I can remember having a corner playing. So his market, if that's his lasting image, I don't know if that'll impact his market, but him getting burned by Scotty Miller in the last play of the first half was like the worst one of the worst plays I've ever seen a corner make, but he's hitting the market. Chidobe Awuzie, who was a guy I really liked coming out of the draft from Dallas. He went to Colorado. He's a big, long corner. Akello Witherspoon from San Francisco, same thing. Troy Hill, Mike Hilton are pretty like slot guys, so I don't see them fitting Seattle, but they're going to get decent money. And
There's
then
another big name that you're forgetting.
Yeah, go ahead. That will.
Oh God!
I was gonna say like
this is some premeditated bullshit from Nathan
I'm just
tonight.
flicking him in the head.
I jokingly threw it out in the chat as a total joke to essentially set up this, and everyone's like, "No, he sucks." I'm like, "No, you missed what I was doing."
He is bad now, though, right? I mean, in all seriousness, he hasn't played well. Yeah.
But, like that would be the weirdest Seahawks signing ever. Like I don't think I could cheer for that guy ever.
He was really good for one play, though.
I know.
That's all that mattered.
I'll never cheer for him again. What the
So
fuck
much
did they
pain.
throw the Super Bowl to Ricardo Lockett? Seeing this picture is infuriating.
So much pain.
That was the stupidest idea.
We've moved
Did
on.
we ever find out why Belichick benched Butler in Super Bowl 49?
No.
Do you guys remember that storyline?
Yeah, and they lost the game because they couldn't cover the Eagles.
Yeah. Good Lord.
Okay,
All
so-
right, so let's look. There's a
Still
lot
couple
of
more I'll mention quickly. Desmond King, who had a pretty good year in San Diego and LA and Tennessee. Sidney Jones is a guy that we argued a lot in our chat about last year. He's a free agent. Rashad Breeland, who's been a starting player for Kansas City. And Ronald Darby, who's been up and down with some NFC East teams. So there's a lot of names out there.
Mhm.
They should take a stab at one of those guys. One of those veterans.
I mean, especially if you look at, I mean, it's not all old guys or really young guys. You've got a nice mix in that age where, they've played enough, they know enough, they've learned that they could probably come in and help to a certain extent. I'm a little amazed looking at this list at all these names that are well known. I mean, like Jason McCourty, AJ Bowie, there's, Josh Norman, DJ Hayden. There's a lot of names that people know out there. The fear then becomes, which I believe the Cardinals did, do you grab a name for a name like they did with JJ? Not that JJ's still not good, but he's not who he was, but he's a name. I hope that they don't get, caught up in that unless the name is Richard Sherman. All right. So what are we thinking with the cornerbacks? We're kind of all in agreement that Griffin will probably not be back and that they'll just need to go out and find a vet, or is there someone, how is this draft class with cornerbacks? Is it worth, going after someone there with the couple of picks that we have?
Jeff, why don't you talk about the draft?
I don't know much about the cornerback draft yet. Some people have said it's pretty good, but not until like the middle rounds. And Seattle typically doesn't draft corners until after the third round. I think Griffin's the highest corner they've ever drafted. So, yeah, maybe they find a guy in the fourth or fifth round, and I think they have a couple picks there, but I don't think that should be their plan. Maybe they're hoping you hit a flyer and you get a long-term option, but it seems like a perfect position to sign a stopgap or take a flyer on one of these young guys, like another year of Dunbar or Kevin King or something like that. One of those options, I think they have to, sort of what Nathan said last week with pass rushers, they're in the situation where they can sort of sit back and see who sort of falls through the cracks. Because none of those guys really jump off the page as a fit to me. And it's based, and they got to spend their money elsewhere. So it might be a position where you sit back, see where the value is, and then go after one or two guys.
Sure.
Shall we move on to safety?
Yeah, to safeties.
Well, real quick, I have a question.
Please.
So, what? I just kind of real quick around the table. So, would you be happy if they didn't add anyone to the cornerback position in free agency and just maybe added a fourth or fifth round corner in the draft?
No, they need to do both.
No.
Because Reed's coming off at the end of his deal. I don't know how much longer Flowers has.
Well,
And is
here's,
like a Dunbar enough for you, or does it need to be more than that?
I think I'm fine with that. Just a body, one guy.
I'd be a little nervous.
I'd be nervous about Dunbar too. Yeah. If you can get another guy without that history for close to the same amount of money, I think I'd probably prefer that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just, with so little cap, right? And I think everyone hears a line that, the top priority is offensive line, right? we'd all like to see them land Lindsey, right? That would be no. You don't think top priority is offensive line, Dayna?
Oh, I do. I absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Get nasty in here.
1000%.
No. I was just, yeah. Okay. So like, I mean, he's not going to be super cheap, right? And there are still positions to fill in, right? There's receivers that we like. There are some corners that we like. They have defensive line. They have a huge hole there now, seemingly at defensive end, right? So like, I don't know. Like, is this a position where you just kind of look at what you have and squint and hope it's good enough? I mean, it seems like you can do that, right? This one and like linebacker, right, are two that, while it might be nice to add, while it would be great to bring back KJ, be great to bring in Sherm, right? Like, there just doesn't seem to be a ton of need here.
Yeah, I guess you have to look at it then like depth. So maybe then you could just go with the draft, because then, you're one injury away from being completely shorthanded. So I think that would make me a little nervous, but this whole team makes me nervous. So who knows? But all right, so let's move on to safety. Nathan, are you still wanting to trade Jamal Adams?
I don't think I've ever advocated for trading Jamal. I certainly didn't.
You wanted to cut him? I don't remember. You said something that sent me through the roof the other day.
Either. I don't know. I mean, I don't hate the idea of it, right? I still don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel super comfortable paying him a ton of money. I think that they probably overpaid him, or in the trade. So I don't have to trade Jamal Adams, but like that seems like a pretty good spot to help fill in some holes, right?
Like, are you comfortable, yes or no, paying Jamal Adams $18 or $19 million a year?
Me or Nathan?
Nathan, but all of you. Like, straight up.
Yes.
You are, okay.
It doesn't bother me as much as the acquisition cost though bothers
me.
Because I said in our chat the other day, like, the cap's going up, Bobby's deal is about to come off the books. It's really not going to prohibit too much of what they do in the future, because it actually will lower his cap this year. But I still can't get past what they paid for him. And it's sort of like, I always will bring this up. It's sort of like the stock market. And like, for example, like Tesla stock, like 2 weeks ago was like $900 and now it's like $600. So they essentially paid $900 for like a $500 player. And it's just gonna keep, like, if you put Jamal in the trade market now, a year later, essentially using my stock market example, he'd go for $500, but he would come close to 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick.
Here's the thing. I mean, I feel like I need to stand up for me and Brian, because it's always Brian and I that are like, you have a blue chip player, he is completely, team changing, you pay him. And I still believe that. It probably doesn't help, again, my favorite position on the field. But
was he a team changing player pre-Carlos Dunlap?
With his injury, no. But you know what? Yes, that first game, you can't.
He was good. He was good in
Lord,
Atlanta.
That was nice.
I will give that to you.
That was good. And
that was beautiful.
I think if we see more of that, which we started to see more of, once he was starting to be better, and now he's had surgery, I think that next year, yeah, I'm really excited about Jamal Adams, and I really want him to stay in Seattle. So, and that's just, like I said, I'm probably a little biased on that. Jeff, why don't you read off our safeties and who we kept, who we don't have, all that good stuff.
Okay, well, Jamal Adams is in the last year of his contract. He got the 5th-year option. I think it's $9.5 million. Quandre Diggs is in the last year of his contract. He's, I think, making around $5 or $6 million. Ryan Neal is an ERFA. I don't know what that really is. Evan might know better.
Exclusive rights, free agents.
Yeah, so he'll be back. He'll be back. He played way above his head. And then who's the 4th safety? Hill's a free agent. If they sign him, I would be stunned.
Hill is a free agent, you said?
Delano Hill is a free agent. And that's their entire. Demarius Randall is a free agent.
Honestly, I'd bring back Lano on like a minimum salary deal.
Nah, get rid of him. He's just like a sign of a wasted pick. I don't.
But like, you need that depth, Jeff. Like,
sign a league minimum guy to just do what he does. He plays special teams.
Okay,
Bradley McDougall
I'm
was
not going to
good.
die on the Dayna hill.
Yeah, like, you're not wrong. They signed him to like an 850,000. I'm like, fuck this.
Done with it. Man. You know,
I don't know. Like,
I think that
one of those guys you just walk away from. It's like, okay, we failed on this pick. This is a disaster.
Him and Tedrick.
That was, oh god. Because the worst part is this is the 2017 draft. That's this year's free agency, and all the names that we keep seeing, Juju and all these guys, Posick, and it just keeps coming back. And they figured, oh, we fixed the Legion of Boom. We got Tedrick and Delano. And then they're gonna, if they don't sign Carson and Griffin and Posick for that matter, they're gonna have 0 players left from that draft class. 0. And we always look at like what that draft class could have been. I think in 2021 they are gonna have 0 players left.
That's crazy to think about.
That is crazy. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Like wipe it off the books. Moving on.
I think that's the draft class that changed this entire franchise.
jeez.
I think in this safety group that we have in Seattle, though, I think that Adams and Quandre Diggs are 2 optimal players for extensions and for getting some of that money off of this year. You know, you get them, get the numbers lower this year, pay them later. You guys know how I feel about Adams. I want to talk about Diggs for a second, though. I never got my pick 6. I begged for it all last season, every single game. I never got it, but I still think that he is a quality player. Nathan, is he someone that you think Seattle should keep around?
Yeah, I mean, he plays an important position. He plays it well. I thought he started the season off pretty rough and then kind of evened out a lot. Didn't have any real I mean, I don't remember him giving up big plays or anything. He seems to play all that really well. So, and what, he's making like $6 million or something like this year?
6.1. Yeah.
I mean, you're not really going to. I don't know. I like, again, like if it's the difference between getting like Lindsley or not, like I don't know. There's a lot of guys I'd cut before him, right? Like Jaron Reed and some other folks. So I don't see any reason to think about moving on from him right now.
Right.
Keep in mind, though, Dayna, you said something. He is a player, if they were to extend him, would actually reduce cap space.
Mm-hmm.
Just an FYI. So Jamal Adams is a guy that would increase cap space for 2021.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean both of them. Yeah.
You're
right.
good.
I thought Adams would decrease too, right?
So Jamal Adams, I think I'm getting my terminology maybe a little bit confusing. Extending Jamal Adams would save the Seahawks cap space this year,
right.
but extending Diggs would not save the
so
Seahawks cap space this year.
Oh, you flipped them. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Did I?
Yeah,
My fault.
That's okay. I was like, wait, I thought that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think Seattle's pretty solid in those 2 positions. Does anyone disagree with Diggs about what Nathan said about Diggs?
No, very accurate.
Keep him. Yeah. Right. Okay. So is there any need in this position, do you guys think, to go out and get that free agent? Do you feel like you need to do that? Do you just go into the draft looking at this? Once again, I'm not a big draft person, so I don't know what the safety looks like this year, but or is this, is this one of those positions that Nathan was talking about before they just kind of let it ride?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Seahawks right now have so much uncertainty on their roster. I posted a tweet the other day. It got a little crazy. I'm not a good Twitter guy, but this one got crazy. I just posted their needs.
Uh-huh.
And I went defensive end 1, corner 1, wide receiver 3, tight end, left guard, center, way down running back. Way down. So
safety's at the bottom too, though.
So safety is probably, other than quarterback and wide receiver 1 and 2, probably the one position you're pretty comfortable with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they need a backup. They could get a league minimum guy, spend a 6th-round pick, fill it in like there. Ryan Neal's probably the backup at both spots, and this is one thing where you can finally go into a year and say, okay, we're fine. Mm-hmm. It is the strength of their team right now, other than quarterback.
Sure.
I don't know if that's where you want to build with a guy who can't really play coverage and safety, but that's what you got.
Don't start.
It's he's a unique player, but
yes, he is.
If you spent that same capital on offensive line, maybe we're not having this conversation today.
Maybe.
What would you trade Jamal Adams for, Dayna?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
If you could like do the exact same deal that the Jets did.
It's essentially a free year.
I'm taking that as a yes. That's too long of a silence.
I literally am sitting here thinking about, it's like, who could replace that level of talent on the team, right?
Yeah. What if you could have got like Ryan Ramczyk for him like last year?
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. What?
What if you could have got like Ryan Ramczyk for a first and a third last year instead of giving up 2 1s? Like, would you rather Jamal or a 1 and a 3 for Ryan Ramczyk?
You got to remember, Dayna hates offense and fun and scoring points. She only likes defense and pain.
I don't hate scoring points. I just think that it's secondary to stopping scoring points.
Every time Russell Wilson throws a touchdown, Dana's like, "Damn it! No. Why did it have to happen?"
No, she's excited because Jamal, the defense, gets to come on the field.
Exactly.
She's not excited they scored.
If they trade Jamal for 2 firsts and a third, and it allows them to bring Sherm back.
Oh, see, no, sorry. I'm sorry. We're looking at the talent level of a player of Sherman in his prime. So no, I wouldn't do it. I'm sorry. I think if you're going to do that, it has to be talent for talent. And so I just don't know who else I would bring.
So 3 first-round picks.
Why, Nathan? Why?
I'm just trying to figure out where the line is.
Your breaking point.
I am.
Nathan tries to find my breaking point on a daily basis.
So is that a yes on 3 first-round picks or no?
Oh my God, you have to think about this.
I think maybe, yeah. 3 first-round picks and a good player.
This just in, Dayna is advocating for the trade of Jamal Adams.
Everywhere. Just put it in chat. Dayna hates Jamal Adams.
You're next on his hit list. It's Joe Fan and then you.
No.
So for you, it's Jamal Adams and Deshaun Watson are like equal in terms of trade value because that's what the Texans want, right?
Absolutely
3 first-round
not.
picks.
Jamal
it's Adams
Adams.
Up there. Yeah. Sure.
He's a quarterback.
I love Watson.
He's a quarterback. No, I like Watson too. I really do. Yeah. No.
Should we move on to Patreon questions?
Yeah, he wants us to shut up. Is what he wants us to do. Yes, let's move on to Patreon questions. I apparently need a Jamal Adams jersey. That's what happened.
Okay, I'm gonna hit this first question.
You should wait until they extend him just to make sure, because that ain't like a done deal.
Right. Agreed.
Is it kind of weird that like we haven't heard reports of that yet?
I think
no one's really doing it.
We would be stressing about this a lot more though if it wasn't for the rest drama.
Yeah, Seahawks just need some more stress. That's what they need.
Jesus, Nathan. Pete seemed. This question is just funny because it's very like rotten brain, like Seahawks rotten brain, like why the fuck do we care this much? But I'm gonna ask it anyway. Pete seemed to be more snarky and snappy in his interviews in the press conferences this year towards the end of the year. What do you think the reason for this was? And I know you're a professional therapist and psychoanalyzer, so I'm here for your answer.
I think it hurt him to see his team have a successful passing attack like that.
At the end of the year? Really?
No, throughout the entire year. Yeah.
Move along.
He saw Shoddy open it up, and he saw Russ throwing all those touchdowns, and it physically pained him.
Oh, Nathan.
I thought Dayna just left.
I'm out.
Nathan, that was brilliantly executed. I am so impressed right now.
Lord.
Jeez. Jeff, Jaron Reed has a $13.5 million cap hit next season. Would it have made more sense to cut Reed rather than Dunlap?
Yes, 100 times out of 100. I think Carlos Dunlap's contract was inflated compared to what he's going to get. Mm-hmm. But to me, Jaron Reed is very similar to what we said about the Griffin to a lesser extent. And I don't think he's a difference maker. I think he's an above average starter. His cap hit this year is $13.5 million, which is insane. And I think a defensive tackle in general is a position you can replace much cheaper than defensive end. So to me, and when I was arguing about this, and I had a lot of arguments about this last week, so I'm pissed off I was wrong. But to me, Jaron Reed's contract jumped out to me as why would you not get rid of that instead? No one's going to trade for it because the cap's so screwed up and he's salary is way inflated. He's in the last year of his deal. It's just not a smart deal to take on. But to me, if you're going to move on from a player, he, to me, would have made 100 times more sense.
But it's just a different situation, right? I mean, Condotta reported this, that they had an agreement when they traded for Dunlap that they would let him play out the year and they would either release him or extend him, right? And it may turn out that it was extremely dumb that they didn't extend him, right? Who knows what Dunlap was asking. But like I don't think releasing Dunlap was just about freeing up cap space, because I think you're right? I think Reed makes a lot more sense to cut if that's all it's about.
Maybe you cut both.
What's that?
Maybe you could have cut both.
Well, sure, and maybe they still will, right? I mean, who knows? Depending on what they end up doing. But like,
they need to do more.
Yeah, I think the Dunlap thing was. I don't think people are talking enough about the agreement that they made with him when they traded for him, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had brought that up a couple of times, and I don't think when I first heard about him being released, I don't think I had really read that part into it. So it made a little bit more sense. Maybe it was respecting. At least I hope that's what it was.
It was only Condotta who reported that, right? We didn't see that anywhere else.
That's all I saw. Yeah, I don't know. So it could be wrong. Right?
I'm not doubting the report. I was just curious if we saw it anywhere else.
I know Evan's a big Jaron Reed guy.
Yeah, longtime fan. Really properly evaluated that contract. Dayna, who gets the most snaps at corner next year? So I think that's a question of both talent and health, probably.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were going to give me names. I'm like waiting. I'm like,
Oh no.
I think we're going to see a lot of Reed next year. I think that he really did exactly what Carroll and the coaching staff wanted out of him, and they were really jacked about him at the end of the year. So I think we're going to see a lot of Reed next year. And then it just kind of depends on who they bring in for that kind of secondary place. But I think it'll be Reed. I think we're going to see a lot of him.
It's fair. We have one other question, and Dayna, I'll give you the final word again, actually. How do you feel about Deshaun Shedd as a recent addition to the coaching staff, which is pretty cool?
I think that is very cool. And I was very excited for him. He was always, from everything that I read and in interviews and, talking to people, he was always someone that was super positive, a valued member of the team. He was great in the locker room. People really liked him. And I really feel like when they brought him back and then cut him, I felt like I was really surprised that happened, to be honest with you. Although we weren't really able to watch a ton of training camp, but I was a little surprised. So I'm glad that they saw the value in what he knew and how he knew the system, and are going to use him as a coach. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we start to see a lot of ex-players as coaches.
I kind of have always felt this way on Shedd pre this whole coach signing. And maybe it's a little bit of a hot take, but I thought he was like an underrated
I did too.
Depth part of that Legion of Boom.
Oh,
like,
I did too.
The least hot take thing ever.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Incredibly reasonable.
Nobody ever talks about him, right?
Yeah,
but when Maxwell or Sherman or, I don't remember if he was still on the team with Browner. I think that came later, but Shedd was like a very capable corner in like those 2013, 2014, 2015 years. Like, dude he'd be a cornerback one on any other team, like during those years.
Yep. He
Jeff,
was just stuck
fuck off. Deshaun Shedd was amazing.
I think he was. I think he was solid. Yeah, I think
like a very calm take to like an extremely over the top.
No, I agree with you completely. And I think that, one thing about the Seattle front office is, as much as Nathan hates them, they really are pretty good at seeing through some of, you're just going to eat me alive when I say this, but seeing some of the outside skills. So not necessarily on the field skills, but teaching and that sort of thing. They brought him back. And I really think that he he will flourish in that role of coaching. Not every player can be a coach. We all know that very well, but I really think that he'll probably do well there. Another ex-Seahawk that is now coaching too is Jerron Johnson is back at Boise State, and he's coaching for his college team now too. And so I think that we're just kind of see some of these guys whose names we knew and they were in that Legion of Boom and coaching roles now, and I think they'll succeed well.
It's crazy seeing the former best cornerback in the league and the former best strong safety in the league. Yeah, it's coaches now, you know, it makes you feel old.
We are old.
Well, some of us are old.
And I'm no fun. I'm the mom. I'm old and I'm no fun.
That is all we have for Patreon questions.
Okay, great. Well, you guys, you know, I think you guys, this group has gone through all the position groups. And Jeff, you said you tweeted out, you know, where you thought their biggest need was, you know, if you had to narrow it down other than offensive line, because I think that we all agree with that straight across the board. What is your one position of need just to wrap things up tonight?
It's got to be pass rusher. There's just a glaring hole on their roster. Without Dunlap, it was the biggest issue. If you watch those first 8 or 9 games, it was so obvious watching them. And right now, their number one pass rusher projects to be Darrell Taylor, who didn't play a snap last season. So
we have no idea if he's good or not. Right?
He's fine to have. He's a total wild card, but with their money, with the market, it's got to be there. If I do a quick second, it's tight end. I don't want them to spend a lot there, but they need to get better at that spot.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I think it's defensive end and then, after offensive line, right? Then defensive end. Then
always after, offensive line across the board for sure.
Yeah, double down on offensive line. Obviously, Russell is unhappy, and he's the most important player on the franchise, you know, on the team, and keeping him happy and in the fold is important. So, you know, satisfy him, build a wall around him. That's what they should do.
Yeah, it's not too bold to say this is the most important free agency period for the Seahawks, maybe in this entire year.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We say that every year, but this year it's probably true. Like if they don't nail this, Russell might not be our quarterback next year.
There's lingering effects. They have way more needs than they've had in a long time. Mm-hmm. And there's more names. Like I was looking at the free agent list, like someone like Bud Dupree in most years, he's the number 1 player. He's like the number 6 pass rusher in this class. Like there's way more names. Like Nathan mentioned a couple of names in our chat today, Emmanuel Sanders. Like a guy like that usually is like one of the stud names in free agency. And he's like the 18th best receiver. Like this is a unique year.
Mm-hmm. It's unique in twofold because 1, nobody has any money, but 2, the market is flooded with great talent. So it's going to be, again, like we've all been saying, and every media outlet has been saying, it's going to be a lot of 1-year prove it deals or 1 year and see what else we can do for you. And it's just going to be who wins those phone calls.
I think I don't agree with that, actually. I don't think it'll be 1 year.
Shocking.
I don't, though, because you don't have any flexibility with how you structure the contract when you do a 1-year deal. If you sign a 1 year, $5 million deal, it's $5 million against your cap, right? I mean, I'm not wrong there, right?
Nope.
But if you do a 2-year, $10 million, right, it could be 4 and 6 or 3 and 7 or something like that, right?
Right, but isn't it going to come down to the player if they'll sign a 2-year deal because they know that cap is going up. They know there's going to be more money to be had out there. So they want to be able to capitalize that starting in next year. Yeah,
well, and so it'll be interesting to see, right? Because like Seattle can sign 3 1-year, $5 million players, right? That's it. And we just talked about, I mean, and we just talked about all the things that we'd like them to do, right? And all these names from like Emmanuel Sanders to Jonnu Smith to Corey Linsley to Richard Sherman, right? Like a 1-year, $5 million deal for Sherm. That's over 25. That's over a quarter of their available cap space, right?
Yeah.
Which normally 1 year, $5 million sounds very little. So teams are gonna, and you're right, players are gonna want to get back out there, but it's gonna be interesting. I think teams are gonna want to do longer deals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be, and it'll be interesting to see where that cap ends up once they start hopefully restructuring some of these deals and moving some money around a little bit. So let's hope they get some more money. All right, guys. Well, I want everyone to thank everyone for hanging out with us tonight. Evan, when will we be back? Free agency, probably?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the tampering period.
An emergency pod any day now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, once this tampering period opens up on Monday, I think it's 4 p.m. New York time is when it opens. That's when the tampering period opens, and then Wednesday is like the formal kickoff of contract negotiations and free agency. So I think, or maybe we'll just plan for next Wednesday.
Yeah, I think we're next
St.
Wednesday.
Patrick's Day.
We should know a lot by then.
Yeah.
Green beer around for everybody.
Sounds
For
fun.
sure.
I like it.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone go
All
check
be
out.
pissed off.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff. What?
No, I'm saying we're likely all to be pissed off that they didn't sign any of the players we wanted, just like last year. We thought Seattle was going to crush free agency, and
we will have a ton of resolution, like literally though, in the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
One way or the other.
We will know if Seattle is pursuing, some of those premium free agents that most of us want them to, right? So
stock up at the liquor store, people. You're going to need it. That's the way it's going to be. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Go to, of course, you can join our Patreon. We would love for you guys to do that. It's patreon.com/hawkblogger, if I remember correctly. And then you can come over and hang out in our Slack. Our Slack is wild and it is hot. And those guys are talking all the time. It's super fun. So do that. And then we'll be back on St. Patrick's Day, hopefully with happy faces.